morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Lori's very excited. I didn't see you sneak in back there. It's good to see you. Good to see everybody here this morning. We're all stumbling back and forth with some of the technology and the added things that we have to do now to keep each other safe, but the important thing is we're here to worship the Lord.
Amen.
And that's what matters in the end. Last week we started talking about, we embarked on a path. And part of that path we really talked about was we realized that there's forks in the road when we come on our path. And Ricky, I see he's got that fork right in his shirt there. Anybody else got their fork with them? Anybody ask you about your fork this week? Okay. That means you got to put it in a more prominent place if nobody's asked about it. So, okay. The main principle that we discussed last week was this, that it's your direction that's going to determine your destination. It's not about your intention, and it's not about what you want to happen, but it's the direction that you're traveling. And we also talked about your intentions. Okay? We all want to be good. We all want to go to heaven. But that alone isn't going to get us there. If we hope to arrive in sunny Florida, but we're traveling west on Interstate 80, guess what? We're not going to get there. We're going the opposite direction. We need to be going in the correct direction if we want to end up at our desired destination. And geography is pretty simple, straightforward. We know that. Why then, when it comes to so many areas of our life, whether it be our spirituality, our morality, relationships, finances, even our eating habits and exercise, that we walk one direction and hope to wind up in another one? It simply does not work that way. And that's why I wanted to give you that fork, so that during the week as we go through these lessons about the path, that it might remind you that we have to make important decisions. Are you up to date on your reading in Proverbs? Okay. Oh, I like that part. That's blank. Are you up to date on reading Proverbs? Because we said last week, we had just started the month of August. There's 31 days. There's 31 chapters in the book of Proverbs where we're going to base this study from. So if you read just one chapter a day, and the thing I realized about Proverbs is the chapters aren't real long. In some of the books of the Bible, a chapter can be 3 or 4 pages. But Proverbs is pretty concise. And there's a lot of good information to be gained there. But this morning, I'm going to ask you to turn backwards, because you're probably around chapter 9, if you're keeping up. I'm going to ask you to turn back to Proverbs, number 1, starting in verse 2. And we discussed this last week, but I want to look at it again this morning before we start. Beginning in verse 2, Solomon says, "For gaining wisdom and instruction, for understanding words of insight, for receiving instruction in prudent behavior, doing what is right and just and fair, for giving prudence to those who are simple, knowledge and discretion to the young." Can I see by show of hands, who does not want to be wise? Anybody not want to be wise? No hands are up. Okay? We all want wisdom. Remember we talked last week, there's a difference between knowledge and wisdom. Knowledge, we know stuff. We can know stuff. But the difference in wisdom is we take that stuff that we know and we put it into practice in our lives. And that's what we truly should seek, is the wisdom. Now, the book of Proverbs was included in the Bible. Is it in everybody's Bible? Everybody got the book of Proverbs in their Bible? Okay. Just want to make sure. Why do you think God put the book of Proverbs in the Bible? He wants us to seek after wisdom, so that we know how to live and how to live as He intended us to live. The Bible's the inspired Word of God, so we know that He must want us to understand wisdom. In this section that we just read, there's a word that's used twice. there's a particular word that's used twice in this short section. It may not be a very common word in use today. But in the context of Proverbs, it is very important. I'll read it again. For receiving instruction in prudent behavior, doing what is right and just and fair, for giving prudence to those who are simple, knowledge and discretion to the young. Did you notice the word this time? Prudent or prudence. The word prudence means to know what to do, to exercise good judgment. And sometimes it's simply defined as having common sense. It's not a word we hear all the time today, but you're going to see it if you've been reading the book of Proverbs. You're going to see that word many times in the book. Solomon uses the term prudent people, and he contrasts that with simple people. I know it's early in my sermon, but I'm just guessing that most of you don't want to be lumped in with the simple people. We don't want to be referred to as simple. Actually, the young man we talked about last week, he was among the simple people. That's how Solomon described him. And here are a couple of examples from the book of Proverbs. In 19:25, Solomon says, "Flog a mocker, and the simple will learn prudence. Rebuke the discerning, and they will gain knowledge." People learn different ways. If you have children, you know this. Some of them learn different ways. Some people can learn with a little bit of a verbal discussion, okay? Pointing out what they're doing wrong. That's all it takes for some to change their behavior. But others, maybe Solomon referred to these as simple people, need a little bit more something to correct their behavior. Solomon said, flog a mocker. Maybe some need some good old-fashioned discipline to learn. And that's just a different way of learning. In 12:26, he tells us, a fool shows his annoyance at once, but a prudent man overlooks an insult. Sometimes simple people, when they're insulted or criticized, they'll fly off the handle. They'll say the first thing that comes to their mind, their emotions get the best of them. They spout off and often say things that they will later regret. But the prudent learn to control their emotions. They learn to take things in stride, to think about things before speaking. Now, how about this one? Proverbs 14:15. A simple man believes anything, but a prudent man gives thought to his steps. Simple people tend to get fooled easily. You ever wonder why there's so many telephone scams and internet scams and Facebook scams? Okay? Because some of the people engaged in it are very easy to fool. Prudent people tend to think about what they see, about what they hear, what they do, and which direction they're headed. Wouldn't it be amazing if we all learned to be prudent? And then imagine if we surrounded ourselves with only prudent people, prudent friends. Proverbs 22:3 says, the prudent see danger and take refuge, but the simple keep going and pay the penalty. Ooh, this one bears another read. The prudent see danger and take refuge, but the simple keep going and pay the penalty. And that's where we're going to go today in our sermon. We're going to talk about the prudent seeing danger and taking refuge, and the simple keep going down that same path. And then they have to pay the penalty. That same proverb, that same saying that I just read, it made the book twice. Okay? It's in Proverbs 22:3 and then repeated verbatim in Proverbs 27:12. I don't think that that's just a coincidence. I think that this point was so important that God made sure we read it at least twice. It's in the book twice verbatim. And we're going to dig into this verse here a little bit. I believe that after last week, we can all agree that the direction we're headed is going to determine our destination, where we're going to end up. We talked a little bit about how do we figure out which path or which fork in the road we're supposed to be on. And in some cases, it's a matter of figuring out which path we need to get off of. Not necessarily just which one we need to be on, but am I on a path that's going to lead me to destruction? I might need to get off that path. The proverb, the prudent see danger and take refuge, but the simple keep going and pay the penalty, is the key to helping us figure this out. The difference between prudent and simple is not what they see. In the proverb, they both see the same thing. They both see danger. The difference is in how they respond. Remember I talked about knowledge is knowing something. The simple know things, okay? The wise know things, okay? But the wise, when they see something, they also know what to do in those situations. One responds by changing course, jumping off that path, or changing direction, turning around, going the other direction. But one simply keeps on going and hopes or intentions, which is why we say intentions don't lead us where we need to go, intentions that the danger will never arrive. Some say that they're like an ostrich. When frightened, ostriches instinctively bury their heads in the sand in the hopes that trouble will pass them by, or so the legend goes. In reality, that's absolutely not true. Ostriches do not bury their heads in the sand. Okay? Not only would they be unable to breathe, they really have no reason to do so. So this saying that a lot of people like to talk about, just bury your head in the sand like an ostrich. Ostriches don't do that. They do not bury their head in the sand when they're scared. It doesn't happen. But maybe the simple of simply thinking, if I ignore what's going on out there, it can't hurt me. So if all see the danger, how do you choose the right path? The prudent make course corrections. Imagine if you're one of those astronauts. Last Sunday, did anybody watch the splashdown last Sunday? Okay, we made sure we were home in time to watch that capsule splash down. The astronauts, they spent the last couple weeks, maybe a month, on the International Space Station. And it was a big deal because it was the first time American astronauts flew on a private spacecraft. The spacecraft was owned by SpaceX, which is Elon Musk, the guy who owns Tesla, developed a space program. And we're thankful that he could do that in these times when there's just not enough money in the government to support some of that research. But it's still important. But the astronauts were on a course to come back home. If you remember Apollo 13, it was a really big deal. Their spaceship was damaged, and they were coming back to Earth, and they were approaching the Earth's atmosphere at the wrong angle. Okay? So they needed a course correction. Apollo 13 had to approach at an inclination no shallower than 5.3 degrees and no steeper than 7.7 degrees. Coming in at 5.2 degrees or below, and that command module would skip off the top of the atmosphere and bounce right back into space, entering a permanent orbit around the sun. Okay? There'd be no coming back from that. They were not going the right direction. They needed to make a course correction. That was an allowable difference of just 2.5 degrees. If you remember geometry, okay, it's been a long time for many of us, maybe not so long for some, but 2.5 degrees is a very small amount. That's the amount of correction they needed so that they wouldn't spend the next million years circling the sun. They wouldn't know because they wouldn't survive, but they needed a course correction. And if we don't check ourselves in the course that we're on, we could be in the same peril. We're not going to wind up in the destination that we desire. Now, sometimes in life it seems a little bit more complicated. The prudent person needs to recognize that they're on the wrong path and get off of it. They may say, this behavior, this habit, this relationship is leading somewhere that's going to hurt me. Somewhere that's going to cause danger. Somewhere that's going to cause regret. I'm getting off this path and getting on a better one. I'm going to go the opposite direction. I'm going to choose that other fork that's in the road. But the simple, they might just keep right on going. When a prudent person senses a relationship going the wrong direction, they do something about it. The simple just keep on going. When a prudent person sees trouble in their financial future, they do something about it. The simple just keep on spending. When the prudent person realizes that God is the most important person in the universe, if they see that their relationship with Him is not growing, they do something about it. The simple, keep doing whatever it is they're doing that took time away from God in the first place. But there's a little bit more to this proverb. Both the prudent and the simple see the danger. Okay? The more to this proverb is the simple just keep on going and they pay the penalty. They pay the penalty for refusing to act or refusing to make a course correction based on what they see. They see no connection between the choices that they're making today and their eternal destination. They simply overlook the fact that every path that we're on has a destination, and it's determined, we already said, by the direction that we're headed. No one likes to be lumped in with the simple people. Are you simple? Does not matter what age you are. You could be 15, 40, 62, 85. It doesn't matter your age. If you see a problem in your future because of your path, you need to get off that path. I can't say it any simpler. You need to make a course correction. Because if you don't, you're just going to keep going, and eventually you will pay the penalty. May not be in this life, but certainly in the afterlife. You don't want to look back and regret that you didn't make a simple course correction, because you're going to be paying the penalty. Let me give you a couple real life examples. A parent notices that his son is always talking back and quick to lose his temper. As the child gets older, he does the same thing to his teachers and to his coaches. The parent thinks, when they grow up, this could be a problem. A concerned grandparent said, I'm worried about his behavior. His mother agrees, however, she thinks it would be too painful to teach her child to submit to authority, or take direction, or take criticism. So she does nothing, hoping that he will grow out of his temper and his hissy fits. This child's going a certain direction. Okay? We know that if he doesn't change direction, his destination is not going to be what his parents would like. You know the destination this path is taking. Failed relationships, fired from one job after another. And why? Because there was no course correction. And they allowed him to keep on going. Maybe another example. Young fella notices he's gaining some weight. Realizes that, as you get older, you gain a little bit of weight. Your metabolism slows down. Your appetite doesn't. And a friend warns him, telling him, when you're in your 40s, this could become a real problem. And it does. He has a heart attack at age 46. He survives. He's trying to figure out how to exercise and eat healthy. But now, the damage to his heart and to his organs is already done. A couple real-life examples of how not choosing the right path or realizing you're on the wrong path and making a course correction doesn't work out so well. The key is this, and this is one for you to remember. Prudent people know what it is. They know what they see, and they make a difference. They make a change, It's what they do. What do? They make a course correction. How do you make course corrections? Sounds pretty simple, but to change your course, you have to take some action. When you're driving down the road and someone pulls out in front of you, what do? I either have to brake or I have to turn the opposite direction, but I have to take some kind of action. I have to step off the path that I'm currently on and go another direction. It sure sounds simple. Sounds pretty simple. But in actuality, it's always a hard and difficult thing to do. We're creatures of habit. We're creatures of momentum. We learned young in science class that an object in one direction in motion is going to continue in motion unless a force acts upon it to change that direction. We naturally continue to do what we're used to doing. If we're used to overeating, we don't feel full unless we've overeaten. If we're used to losing our temper just feels natural to us. Momentum carries us in the same direction that we're continually going. And in order to change direction or change paths, you typically have to give something up. And we're Americans, and we don't like to give up anything. We're entitled. However, think about this. When you see danger, it almost always requires sacrifice. And that's exactly what we don't want to do. Consider the irony in this. When prudent people recognize the danger, they act. But in doing so, the prudent may look foolish to all those around them because they're doing or refusing to do what everyone else is doing. They're acting as if their destination is at hand, and they change course before they reach it, or in many cases before it reaches them. But that's not what the rest of the world is doing. So the prudent, when they make a course correction, they're often criticized, they're chastised for going against the grain, swimming against the current. Just conform, do what everybody else is doing. But where's everyone else's path leading? Okay? We all see the danger. The prudent take refuge. The simple continue on. Did your mother ever tell you the story of the 3 little pigs? The 3 little pigs. You remember the big bad wolf? One pig built his house out of straw. The other pig built his house out of sticks. And the third pig built his house out of bricks. The big bad wolf comes, as he does. And he doesn't just come to one pig. So they all see the danger of the big bad wolf. And guess what? 2 of those pigs, they were simple. But one of the pigs was prudent. He saw the danger that would come, and he built a refuge. The prudent see danger and take refuge. Church, we know that all throughout our life, we're going to have challenges. Besides all of the other issues facing us today, we're threatened with an economic downturn. There will be recovery. That's okay. We're threatened with an economic downturn. We know there'll be a recovery, but then there's going to be another downturn. Prudent people plan for it. In our relationships, something's going to stretch and strain your relationship. Prudent people don't take their marriage for granted, or any other relationship for granted. They work on those relationships in the good times, so that when those strains come, they're going to have strength to weather them. Most important is our spiritual relationship with God. The most important thing in this world is God and our relationship with Him. We've heard so many times about people facing certain death, people on their deathbed. What do they wish for? Do they wish they had more money? Do they wish they had a better home, better car? No. What are they wishing for? First thing they should be wishing for is that they are in the right relationship with God. And the next thing they typically wish for is that the relationships they had here on earth with their family and their friends, they wish they had more time. They wish they had spent more time together. I want you to imagine for 1 minute, if all of us in this building really loved God how we're supposed to. How is it? With all of our heart, with all of our soul, with all of our mind, with all of our strength. Like the Bible tells us in Matthew 22:37. Jesus replied, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. What a great place this would be. And I think we're pretty close. Okay? There's always room for improvement. Okay? We can always do better. We can always love more. But what an amazing place this could become. We would become more and more like our Creator. We'd become more of a true reflection of what heaven's going to be like. And then imagine if that from our building spills over, okay, out into the community. We talked about the community. It's our duty to make sure that the community knows that Jesus Christ came to save them, that Jesus Christ is the Son of God, that God is the most important thing in the world, and that they can be saved no matter what they've done. Imagine our reputation, our morals. What others thought and say about us would be exactly what you would like them to think about us all. Imagine if we could become the men and women that our dogs or cat, Sue's not here, but Donna has a cat. Imagine we could become the men and women that our dogs or cats think we are. Wouldn't that be something? You could yell at your dog, okay, scold your cat, push him off the couch. But they love you. They love you unconditionally. They don't know anything else. Imagine if we became the people that those animals thought we were. We could turn this world around. We could set this world back on the right path. Church, I don't want us to waste one more minute. We need to get off the paths that do not lead where we want to go. And this week, we need to spend some time thinking about our destination, but more importantly, thinking about our direction. And do we need to make a course correction? Remember, it's our direction, not our intentions, that will determine our destination. And the prudency danger and take refuge. They don't just think about it. They don't just worry about it. They don't pretend it's not going to happen. They do it. They make that course correction. Now, next week we're going to look at why sometimes we have such a hard time seeing what the right path really is, and why we have such a hard time admitting that we need to make a course correction. You don't want to miss that. I want to make sure that you're here. Keep reading in the book of Proverbs. It should be on about chapter 9 at this point. Make a course correction in your life as needed. I venture to say that each and every one of us could change something, change direction, make a course correction. And most of all, I want to make sure that you remember your fork. At the end of...
Four prongs, Joe.
Still has 4 prongs? That's good. At the end of every service, we offer an invitation. If you need help figuring out what the right path is, or getting on it, if you need help getting off the wrong path, if you need more study, if you need to confess Jesus Christ as your Lord, if you need to be baptized, if you need the prayers of the church, just let that need be known.